I didn't call a lawyer when I found the cabin. I didn't call the police either. I stood there in the trees, coffee cooling in my hand, staring at a structure that absolutely did not belong on my land, and realized something important. Whoever built it wasn't confused. They were daring me to blink. I'm not the kind of man who blinks. Before we begin, make sure to subscribe to HOA Stories and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from today? My name is Jack Miller. I moved back to my family's land after my father passed, a quiet stretch of wooded property he'd protected his whole life. No neighbors close enough to wave at, no traffic noise, no homeowners association newsletters taped to my door. Just trees, birds, and boundaries I knew as well as my own name. My father drilled that into me early. Land doesn't protect itself. If you don't walk it, mark it, and enforce it, someone else will decide where it ends. That morning started like every other. I woke before sunrise, poured black coffee, and walked the eastern boundary trail. I'd done it 1,000 times. That's why the shape didn't register at first. Straight lines don't belong in the woods. Nature curves. This didn't. I stepped closer. It was a cabin. Fresh lumber, clean windows. A real foundation, not a shed someone dragged in overnight. This thing had permits somewhere, money behind it. Confidence, and it sat well inside my property line. I checked my phone, GPS. Parcel overlay. Then I pulled the old survey my father had laminated decades ago. Same answer every time. The cabin wasn't near the line. It wasn't brushing it. It was planted deep on my land like someone thought ownership was optional. That's when anger should have hit. It didn't. What I felt was colder, focused. People who make mistakes apologize. People who build cabins on land they don't own are betting on something. They're betting you won't want the fight. They're betting you'll complain, hesitate, negotiate, or get tired. And if you don't stop them immediately, the structure becomes established, then historic. Then suddenly you're the bad guy for wanting it gone. I took photos. Wide shots. Close-ups. Automatic timestamps. GPS coordinates burned into every image. Then I walked away. The next move wasn't confrontation. It was observation. I approached from a different angle later that morning and found the path. A narrow access trail leading straight back toward a nearby subdivision run by an HOA. That explained the confidence. HOAs don't ask first. They build, then argue later. Momentum is their favorite weapon, so I planted a line where it mattered. I didn't put a sign on the cabin. That would have been too obvious. Instead, I drove a steel post into the ground at the choke point of the trail and mounted a bright red sign. PRIVAT. Property. No trespassing. Loud. Legal. Impossible to miss. I photographed it, stepped back, and went home. If this was a misunderstanding, that sign would end it. It didn't. The next morning, before my coffee finished brewing, my phone buzzed. Motion alert. One of my trail cameras caught headlights cutting through the trees. An SUV stopped right at the sign. Doors opened. Voices low and irritated. A woman stepped into view. Blonde bob. Crisp jacket. Clipboard tucked under her arm like it was part of her body. She read the sign, smiled without warmth, and shook her head. Then she pointed down the trail toward the cabin. That was my first look at Melissa Carter, president of the Ridgeview HOA. By mid-morning, she was standing at my gate. She didn't knock. She walked straight up like she already belonged there. 3 people stood behind her, all wearing matching HOA polos. One looked bored. One looked uneasy. The third kept staring at her phone. "Good morning," Melissa said brightly. "I'm Melissa Carter, HOA president. I didn't invite her in. We noticed a sign went up on one of our access trails," she continued. "It's causing some confusion." "It's my land," I said. Her smile tightened. "That area has traditionally been used by the community. There it was, not a question. A claim. There hasn't been a cabin there before, I said calmly. She blinked, annoyed more than surprised. Our board approved it as a community retreat. When did the board vote? I asked. Her eyes flicked to the clipboard. It was handled internally. That's not a vote. One of the men behind her shifted uncomfortably. Melissa noticed and hardened. Look, she said, lowering her voice. You just moved back. There's no reason to start things off on the wrong foot. We value cooperation. So do I replied. The sign stays. Her jaw set. You don't have authority to restrict access. On my land, I said, I do. She turned slightly away from me and said quietly, take care of it. The uneasy man hesitated. Now, she snapped. They left without another word. I didn't check the cameras right away. I already knew what I'd find. That afternoon, they came back in broad daylight. No secrecy, no shame. 2 men stepped out of the SUV. One recognized me from the porch. He looked around first. The other didn't bother. Bolt cutters came out. The wire snapped clean. The sign fell. Then, one of them kicked it into the brush and bent the steel post forward with his boot until it screamed. That wasn't confusion. That was vandalism. I watched the footage twice. Clear faces. Clear actions. Clear intent. Then I archived it in 3 places and wrote a letter, not angry. Boring, factual. Certified mail to every HOA board member. I documented the sign, the warning, the damage, the video. Then I gave them 30 days to remove the unauthorized structure from my land. After that, anything left would be considered abandoned property. Melissa responded with a community-wide email. She framed it as a safety issue, claimed the sign was removed to prevent injury, accused me of hostility. She didn't deny anything. She reframed it, so the next morning I put the sign back. Same spot, deeper post. And beneath it, a second notice. This area is under video surveillance. No threats, just truth. By then, Melissa had already decided how far she was willing to go, and she hadn't realized yet that she'd stopped dealing with a neighbor and started building a criminal record. Melissa didn't back off after the second sign went up. She adjusted her tone instead. That's how people like her operate. When force fails, they try paperwork. When paperwork fails, they try narrative. And when narrative fails, they panic. The email she sent that afternoon was longer, softer, and copied an HOA attorney this time. Words like temporary, shared use, and ongoing discussions were sprinkled everywhere, as if saying them enough times could make the cabin legally migrate off my land. She asked that I refrain from unilateral actions while they reviewed records that supposedly supported their claim. I didn't reply. Silence is unsettling to people who expect pushback. It leaves them alone with their own assumptions, and assumptions are where mistakes grow. That night, the cameras lit up again. 2 vehicles this time. They parked farther away, just outside the first camera's range, which told me Melissa had learned something but not enough. 4 people came in on foot, flashlights low, voices tight. They weren't confident anymore. Confidence had been replaced by irritation, the kind that makes people sloppy. They reached the fence I'd installed across the trail that morning. Not symbolic fencing this time. Real steel posts, heavy gauge wire, signs mounted at eye level and knee level so no one could pretend they didn't see them. Someone tugged on the wire. It didn't move. Another voice hissed something sharp. Then bolt cutters came out again. The wire snapped back hard, recoiling like it wanted to punish whoever touched it. One man flinched and cursed. Another widened the gap and bent the wire down. One by one, they stepped through. Trespass. That vandalism. Again. I watched the footage once, saved it, then turned my phone off and went to bed. The trap had closed. There was no reason to rush now. The next morning, I didn't call Melissa. I didn't call my lawyer. I called the county sheriff's office. I need to report repeated criminal trespass and property damage, I said. I have video. Those words matter. A deputy came out that afternoon. Older guy. Calm. The kind of man who's seen every flavor of nonsense and doesn't impress easily. I walked him down the trail, showed him the cut wire, the bent posts, the footprints, then I showed him the footage. He watched without interrupting. That's trespass, he said finally. And vandalism. You want to go talk to them, he asked. Not yet, I said. That caught his attention. If you talk to them now, I explained, they'll call it a civil dispute. Boundary confusion. HOA business. They'll muddy it. He nodded slowly. So what do you want? A case number, I said. An incident report. On record. Most people want warnings. Conversations. Something that feels like action but leaves no paper trail. I wanted the opposite. I wanted permanence. He wrote carefully. Dates. Times. Locations. Locations. He took his own photos. Then he handed me a card with the case number written across it. If it happens again, he said, this escalates. That's all I need, I replied. By the end of the week, Melissa's emails changed again. Longer, more cautious. Fewer people copied. Phrases like seeking clarification and temporary measures replaced demands. Fear, trying to sound professional, but she still didn't stop. Instead, she went around me. A neighbor I barely knew leaned on my fence one afternoon and spoke quietly. She's telling people you blocked an emergency access route, he said. Says you're putting residents at risk. That was mistake number 3. Lying to justify trespass isn't just unethical, it's stupid. That night, I sat at the kitchen table with a yellow legal pad and wrote everything out. Dates, incidents, evidence. Then I typed the letter. Short, precise, boring in the way that makes lawyers comfortable. I addressed it to every board member by name. I stated ownership first. Parcel numbers, recorded deed, survey references, county file numbers. Then I documented the incidents, the sign, the damage, the fence, the second intrusion. I referenced the sheriff's case number and attached still frames from the footage. Then I got to the point. The HOA had 30 calendar days to remove all unauthorized structures from my land. The cabin, the foundation, any materials, any utilities. After 30 days, anything remaining would be considered abandoned property under state law and handled accordingly. No insults, no threats, just consequences. I notarized it that afternoon and sent it 3 ways. Certified mail, email with read receipts, physical delivery to the HOA's registered office. Melissa replied within a day. This time, the attorney took the lead. Mediation was suggested. Temporary restraining orders were hinted at. They asked me to pause action while good faith discussions continued. They didn't file anything. That told me everything. If they believed their own story, they would have gone to court immediately. Asked for an injunction, claimed irreparable harm. They didn't. They wrote letters and hoped time would do their work for them. The deadline came and went quietly. No removal. No court filing, no apology. On the morning of day 31, I walked down to the fence and looked at the cabin. It sat there like it always had. Confident, unmoved. Like it assumed time would eventually make it legitimate. It wouldn't. I reviewed the statutes one more time. Abandoned property, unauthorized improvements, landowner remedies. All clean, all clear. My attorney confirmed it. You've done everything correctly, she said. Waiting longer actually weakens your position, so I waited 2 more days anyway. Not for them. For the record, I wanted the timing to be deliberate, undeniable. On the second night, I stood at the fence and thought about my father. He used to say that if you don't deal with problems while they're small, They don't stay problems. They become neighbors. That cabin wasn't a problem anymore. It was an occupation. I made the call. The demolition crew answered on the second ring. Clock ran out, I said. We'll be there Monday morning, the foreman replied. I didn't sleep much that night. Not from anxiety, from awareness. There's a particular quiet that settles in before something irreversible, the kind that doesn't feel loud but presses in on you anyway. The first engine started just after sunrise. Diesel. Low, steady. Fog hung in the trees like it didn't know what it was about to watch. I handed the crew lead copies of the notice, the survey, and the sheriff's case number. He glanced at them once and nodded. We'll keep it clean, he said. That's all I wanted. The skid steer went first. The bucket pressed into the cabin wall like it was testing something already condemned. Wood cracked decisively. New lumber failed fast. The structure folded inward, angles collapsing into noise and gravity. This wasn't rage. It was reversal. I launched the drone straight up, wide shot. No edits, no commentary, just documentation. By the time the roof came off, a white SUV came screeching to a stop at the trail entrance. Melissa, she didn't park. She stopped in the middle of the road, like she could block reality with the vehicle. She jumped out, phone already recording, voice sharp enough to cut through machinery. What the hell do you think you're doing? I waited until the engine shut down and the clearing went quiet. Then I turned. You were notified, I said. She stormed toward me. You can't do this. This is HOA property. This is criminal. Stop, I said. One word. She did, more out of shock than obedience. I handed her the folder. Notices. Proof. Case number. 30 days, I said. Expired. She flipped through the pages too fast. Her hands weren't steady anymore. This is theft, she said. This is vandalism. No, I replied. This is cleanup. Behind her, the crew worked methodically, lumber stacked. Metal separated. Foundation blocks lifted and loaded. Everything placed neatly across the fence line on HOA land. That's when she saw it. The invoice taped to the top of the stacked materials. Demolition services. Labor. Equipment. Cleanup. Due upon receipt. You expect us to pay for this? She asked. I expect you to read it, I said. She laughed, brittle and loud. You're finished. I'm calling my lawyer. I'm calling the police. They already have the footage, I replied. Her phone lowered slightly. What footage? The fence, I said. The wire. The second entry. Something broke behind her eyes. By mid-morning, the cabin was gone. Not rubble. Gone. The ground scraped clean. No footprint left to argue over. Melissa stood there long after the crew left, recording nothing, arguing with no one. You haven't heard the last of this, she said weakly. She was right. But not the way she thought. And that was when the lawsuit arrived. The lawsuit landed the next morning in a thick envelope stamped urgent, like urgency could rewrite facts. Melissa didn't hesitate. She never did when she thought speed could make up for substance. The complaint was long, dramatic, and expensive-looking, filled with words meant to scare people who didn't read past the first page. Destruction of HOA property. Interference with community access. Emotional distress. 6 figures in damages. They attached glossy photos of the cabin from before demolition, smiling faces, folding chairs, holiday decorations. No dates, no coordinates, just feelings. They also attached a map. I laughed when I saw it. It was a colored printout shaded green over the creek area and labeled Community Recreation Zone. No county seal. No parcel numbers, no bearings. No licensed surveyor stamp. It looked like something thrown together late at night by someone who thought confidence counted as evidence. I forwarded everything to my attorney. She called me 20 minutes later. "This is bad," she said. Then she paused. For them. Melissa didn't stop there. By noon, the HOA social media pages exploded. Posts accusing me of destroying a beloved gathering place. Claims that seniors had been displaced. Warnings about safety, about tradition, about outsiders who didn't respect the community. Melissa herself posted a photo of the empty clearing with a caption calling it a community landmark destroyed by one individual who thought rules didn't apply to him. She tagged the local paper. That was mistake number 4. Because the moment you go public, you stop controlling the record. A reporter called that afternoon. Calm voice, neutral tone. Asked if I wanted to comment on the lawsuit. Yes, I said. On camera. We met the next morning at the edge of the clearing. I didn't dress up. Clean flannel, no logos, no slogans. I brought a folding table and laid everything out neatly. Deed, survey. Aerial images going back years, timeline. Still frames from the fence footage. When the camera rolled, I didn't argue. I explained. I said the land had been in my family for decades. I said a structure had been built without permission. I said I gave notice, documented violations, waited, and removed abandoned property. The reporter asked about the HOA's claim that the land was communal. I handed her the map Melissa had posted. Ask them where this came from, I said, and why it doesn't match any official record. The segment aired that night. Melissa didn't watch quietly. She showed up at the station during the live broadcast and stormed into frame mid-sentence, shouting that I was lying. That the land had been used by the community for 20 years. The cameraman didn't cut away. I didn't interrupt. When she ran out of breath, I stepped forward and held up my deed. Laminated, boring, official. The reporter took it and looked down at the county seal. Melissa stared at it like she'd just been shown something she didn't recognize. The clip spread fast. Not because of me, because of her. By the next morning, her tone changed again. Posts were deleted. Comments locked. The HOA pages went private. People who had been loud the day before suddenly remembered appointments they needed to attend elsewhere. That afternoon, an email came through my website. Anonymous. Short. This isn't right. She never got a vote. She pushed it through herself. If this goes to court, there are things you should see. No attachments. Not yet. I forwarded it to my attorney and didn't reply. The next day, I formally requested HOA meeting minutes. 6 months worth. All votes, all approvals related to land use, construction, or legal action. They were legally required to provide them. They didn't. So my attorney filed a discovery request. That's when the cracks turned into fractures. Internal emails surfaced. Draft layouts. A file titled Retreat Layout, Do Not Share. My land outlined in red. Precise placement. Clean lines. And a note typed casually in the margin, like a reminder on a grocery list. Build fast before he notices. That single sentence did more damage than a confession ever could. We didn't need more evidence. We needed one person who wouldn't lie. I already knew who. His name was Brian Thompson, quiet guy. Board member. The one who stood behind Melissa during the first confrontation and never spoke. The one who looked down at the gravel instead of meeting my eyes. I went alone. No lawyer, no recorder, no threats. He opened the door and didn't pretend to be surprised. I'm not here to argue, I said. I'm here to ask you something simple. We sat at his kitchen table. Coffee went cold between us. I'm not asking you to take my side, I said. I'm asking whether you plan to go down with her. I slid the layout across the table. You knew that wasn't HOA land, I said. You knew before the first board went up. He stared at the paper. She said it would be handled, he muttered. That it always is. Handled how? I asked. He exhaled. Lay. Noise. Noise. Wear people down. I nodded. That works on most people. Silence. She never put it to a vote, he said finally. She told us not to worry. Said nobody ever checks the ridge. That was enough. In court 2 weeks later, Melissa testified first. Red blazer, perfect posture, smooth voice. She talked about tradition, about misunderstandings, about being shocked to see the cabin destroyed without warning. Then the judge asked the question. Mrs. Carter, he said, were there any signs or barriers indicating private property prior to the demolition? No, Your Honor, she replied without hesitation. The land was open. No signs, no fencing. I didn't move. My attorney stood. Your Honor, we'd like to enter Exhibit 12. The screen lit up. Night vision footage. Melissa standing clearly in frame, pointing at the sign, ordering it removed. The man with the bolt cutters hesitating. Melissa snapping, now. The wire snapped. The courtroom went silent. The judge leaned forward. Ms. Carter, he said quietly, you were under oath when you testified moments ago. Her attorney shifted. Would you like to amend your testimony? Melissa opened her mouth, closed it. Then my attorney called the next witness. Brian Thompson took the stand. He didn't look at Melissa. He looked at the judge. He testified to everything. No vote. No permission. No confusion. He confirmed Melissa ordered the build, ordered the sign removed, ordered the fence breached. When he finished, the room felt smaller. The judge removed his glasses. This was not a misunderstanding, he said. This was an unauthorized construction on private land, followed by attempts to fabricate jurisdiction and misrepresent facts under oath. He looked directly at Melissa. That is not advocacy. That is perjury. The ruling was swift. The HOA's case was dismissed. My counterclaim was granted in full. The judge referred the matter to the district attorney for review of potential charges, including trespass, falsification of documents, and perjury. Melissa didn't cry. She didn't argue. She gathered her papers like they still meant something and walked out without looking at me. By that afternoon, her name disappeared from the HOA website. By the end of the week, her resignation letter circulated quietly. Personal reasons, it said. The HOA entered an audit. 2 board members stepped down. The lawsuit vanished from the docket. A week later, the land was quiet again. I walked down to the clearing one morning with coffee and stood where the cabin used to be. Nothing felt missing. That surprised me. People think victory feels loud. It doesn't. Real victory sounds like birds returning to a place that never asked to be occupied. Before I left, I placed one small wooden sign near the trail. No threats. No drama. Just truth carved clean. Private land. No HOA authority. If you've ever dealt with an HOA that thought rules only applied to everyone else, drop a comment, share this story, and follow for more real HOA stories that prove one thing: boundaries only matter if you're willing to enforce them.